just recently dedicated his campus ministry to the church of 1903, aka the Trissell, between mosque and the Mormon temple. Yeah. Then we have Rev.Joshua Longbottom, who's worship pastor at our local Plymouth church. He has a master's in divinity from Eden Theological Seminary in St. Louis. He joined Plymouth in 2006. Last but not least, we have David Greenbaum, former member of Hillel, professor of East London, telling me that you're married in the synagogue. So I'm quite interested in hearing your story, especially as a layperson in the Jewish faith. Anyway, I wish we had a Muslim speaker. So I did talk to a few possible speakers, and they were not able to come. But what's really exciting, we do have a Islamic studies professor who is very much interested in joining next week. His name is Scott Hillel. He wrote a book on sexuality in Islam, which is groundbreaking. So anyway, I'm a member of the Muslim Student Association, so I'll be kind of filling in for the Muslim voice. I'm not a scholar or anything, I'm just a lay person that believes in speak. I guess everybody else, can you introduce yourselves? What you're studying?
Okay. I'm Megan.
Would you like to introduce yourself? What do you study?
I'm Nico. I'm a freshman. These are two of my best friends who helped put this together. And I'm majorly in journalism and international relations, and religion and sexuality was a big interest to me. So I'm really happy they put this event on.
I guess we'll start one by one. Josh, we can go right to left. Start with you. You take about 10, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or less, however. Or more, if you want to talk for an hour. It's a big topic. So just kind of explain how you reconcile sexual orientation with your own faith, how does your tradition about it. Maybe your own journey as a Christian as well.
The first thing, I guess, in my journey, where I encountered a debate in the church with respect to sexual orientation was because I was on the deacons committee when I was in high school, first Congregational, and my dad was the pastor. And I left and went to college and stopped going to church, and my dad left, and the next pastor that they called in to be a candidate was gay. And this conservative element of the church, they call up all these people who were on the roll and could technically vote, and kept him from getting the position. And then some other people who wanted him to get the position called up all the other people who were unbiased and who hadn't been coming to church. And I was invited back to the church for a second vote where we got him installed. And it was great because Pr..Shawn left as pastor when he was there, for example. He's been a great pastor for 10 years or more, I think, at First Congregational, and that was my introduction to controversy, really. And that was about in 1992. My seminary, third of the student population was gay, lesbian, transgender, queer. There was not a real fight about that in the place in the church. I noticed how I was so fickle in my relationship to the church. Do I want to be a professor? Do I want to study religion? Do I want to lead a campus ministry? I'll never work in the church. The church is such a pain, blah, blah, blah. And I was so fickle, and all my colleagues who are gay and lesbians who felt calling to go into the church, I was amazed at what kind of layers of stuff they had to cut through to find any love to be in the church, and yet in many ways I could see that their calling was stronger than my own, which is when I started to get really angry, that people did not see the mark of ministry in these people. Yeah, it might be a history of anger about me finding out the church, and then I would have to say that there's this vision that Jesus has about how we form community, and that you try and do it in such a way that you take the people who have been marginalized by society and you bring them to the center, and then some magic happens, which in the ministry we call the Holy Spirit. You get a vital community, there's life, it's interesting, it's revolutionary. And upon sort of learning the vision of what Jesus was doing in his ministry, it started to become clear to me that each person who's been marginalized for some reason is the only person who's actually an expert in how an inclusive society wouldn't marginalize that person. So I started thinking of the church in those kind of terms. What we're trying to do is create what a truly inclusive society would look like. And gay, lesbian, transgender, queer pastoral leadership is essential in that process. It just can't be done without it. And the same is true with membership in the church and creating that kind of community. And then I've seen in my own time since the last 7 years of acting as a pastor that there really is magic to these communities that are formed with people who've been marginalized. And I can't wait till that lesson gets learned outside of the church, and we start building towns and neighborhoods around the idea that where we cross all these lines of division, magic happens by totally having build communities and make money thinking like this. We just haven't yet. Now I just think it seems like smart to, have your church involved in, gay pride parades and stuff like that. So I'll end with this little story. I didn't really prepare a sermon, which is like 10 minutes. So 15 minutes really pushed me. But I'll just end with this. So my dad is also a pastor. He's kind of a squatty, large man. He's very machismo and heterosexual and, born in 52 or something. So all this awareness really has happened in his life. And he was working at the main church in the UCC in Cleveland. And that church is very flamboyant. And every year they have a huge float in the Gay Pride Parade in Cleveland. And my dad was on this float dressed as it was like a Navy themed thing. He was dressed as a sailor. And he was taking a picture of the Cleveland, Tribune, whatever. It was on, the front page. And it was Methodist pastor, blah, blah. And his church was really upset because they were United Church of Christ. And they wanted credit for being and the Methodist church was in an uproar because at that point, and still now you can't ordain. So, anyhow, that's my personal sort of history. Hope you enjoyed it. Any questions or comments, I guess? that what you expected it to be?
No, I wasn't expecting it. Actually, I didn't know like any church groups would ever be in the gay pride parade.
I'll say this one other thing, I guess. Okay, so I was debating for Kansas State during a time where there was a topic about civil rights and running a case that there should be employment protection against sexual orientation discrimination. And it was at that same time, it was in the middle of that year that Matthew Shepard was killed. And I was going to different campuses every weekend. And I've talked to my debate friends about that since then, and the world changed when he died. Before, when we were touring around with the same thing, and then as soon as, he did, all of a sudden, peer support groups across the nation just popped up. And it's a tight term, and since the 19th century has been, so that's a real sad incident, but he changed the world.
I think my early history was really one of kind of pain of being a pastor of congregations where people came up and expressed pain about the way they were treated in other congregations. I remember two women who were part of a more conservative background coming and just crying on the porch of the congregation I was pastor of because they had just been really humiliated by the pastor of the congregation. I'm just saying, how can God feel this way about us? Or high school students or whatever. So that's my a friend of mine in seminary was a gay pastor, and I don't think I totally realized that, but somewhere during my first year of seminary, he was kicked off the clergy roster for being gay, and I remember thinking, well, why? What is it about this that is? It wasn't quite anger at that point, but it was that question. So I came here in the late 90s as a campus pastor for the Lutheran Church, part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which sounds more conservative, but we're not. Okay, we're the other way. We're less conservative than the Missouri Synod. We ordain women, for example. I'll talk about gays and lesbians in the ministry in just a second, but we chose evangelical in our name because it means good news. And we chose to try to say, we're about speaking good news. And we tried to reclaim the name. I don't think it worked, but anyway, that was the goal. So I came here in 97, and one of the first things our community did was become reconciling in Christ. We said, we welcome all people regardless of, at that point, race, gender, sexual orientation. There was, I can't remember the exact list, I'm going to look it up, but anyway, basically we're welcoming, open community. And that was good. And it was really a no-brainer for the students to be part of that. It was like, why are we talking about this? Why is this an issue? But over the years that followed, I realized that when I was going places, this is really going to dovetail with what Josh said. When I was worshiping places, my experiences at worship were much more profound when it was a sense of all people were part of things, as opposed to just straight white people. We take a group, who was with our group this year, we take a group and we worship at a congregation in the East Village in New York City for spring break. And the pastor is gay, he and his partner live above the sanctuary. And my early experiences as a congregation were just the power of being there with rich people, poor people. I realized why we use incense in church, because the guy next to me one year smelled so horrible, But then on the other hand, on the other side of me was this African American woman who was just like dressed in this fantastic outfit. I was like, wow, everybody's here. Everybody's in this place. one of my primary passions, I guess is the best word, is that of hospitality, is saying everybody's welcome. It's important for us, and as I read Scripture, it's the people on the edges that's where God is at work. God's not at work in the religious people, typically. God's at work way out on the fringes. Rahab the prostitute, or Ruth becomes the great whatever grandmother of Jesus, or Jesus is born in a stable, and it's a history. I mean, Jesus has a hard time with the religious leaders, and so for me, part of that is a theological emphasis on connecting with the people who are marginalized, because it's there where I see God at work. In 2009, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, after much discussion, and if anyone wants to see this, I really think these are good documents. It's not just because I'm Lutheran, but I think they're good documents. There was a lot of biblical study into it, and there was a sexuality study that was passed by the representatives of the denomination. Basically agreeing to disagree, but a little bit more than that. They said, we will disagree on some moral issues, and that's okay. So some of us feel it's fine to ordain gay and lesbian pastors. Some of us disagree. We're not going to push anybody to do one or the other. And it may not sound like much, but I think for us it was kind of a big step. It was a good step. We're living into a new reality. Some people left the LCA because of it, but they were the grown kids. We're in a new place. So I want to share. This is, well, I want to say a couple of things. Sounded like I was done. One of the transforming moments in my life was an article that I read in the early 90s about Isaiah 56. And it's about eunuchs and their relationship to the temple. And Isaiah has some great puns in here, and I want to unpack this after this. Thus says the Lord, maintain justice and do what is right, for soon my salvation will come and my deliverance will be revealed. Happy is the mortal who does this, the one who holds it fast, who keeps the Sabbath, not profaning it, and refrains from doing any evil. Okay, here's where it kind of kicks in on the foreigners and the eunuchs. Do not let the foreigner join to the Lord and say, the Lord will surely separate me from his people. Do not let the eunuch say, I am just a dry tree. For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbath, who choose the things that please me, and who hold fast my covenant, I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. I love that one. And then a little bit later, for my house shall be called a prayer for all peoples. Part of what happens here, part of the background here, is that eunuchs were not allowed in the temple. Do you remember Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. Am I dating myself by saying this? Okay. See, so it's the idea that the things that didn't fit didn't belong in God's framework of things. And so a eunuch is imperfect. The eunuch is missing something and doesn't belong in the temple. And that's the way a lot of the purity laws went. But here God's saying, I'm doing something different. The eunuchs are going to be allowed in the temple. And what the author of the book said is, God does a new thing in Isaiah 56. Is God doing a new thing for us? Is God bringing people to the temple who have been shut out of the temple? So for me, this was a profound new way of seeing things. That the idea that God evolves, if I can use that word in campus, okay? That God's vision for humanity evolves, and that God does a new thing. Part of what I hope we can do, and this is my passion, I think, with this, is I think we need, and by we I don't just mean Christians, but I think we who live in America need to be able to reclaim some understanding of the Old Testament and the New Testament. I'm sorry, Hebrew Scripture, Christian Scripture, whatever we want to call it. That, because it's been so claimed and misused by evangelicals and fundamentalists, I think it's important for us to develop a new understanding of what Scripture says and how it says it, because it has been so badly misused. Yeah, one more thing I want to make sure I said, and I forgot. Obviously, wasn't that. Yeah. It's so easy to pick verses and say, this is wrong. But I think reading the Scripture as a whole, there's a clear emphasis of God's caring for mortals. And my question is, so how do we, I feel like we've sort of lost the ability to speak back to them. Unless we can utilize Scripture, we can't respond. But this is why I'm so happy that we're doing this, because it's a chance to say, no, not all religions, not all church groups or whatever groups hold those focused on the family-like positions. You know, we're three representatives of that, but there are many, many more out there. There are many groups that are going to have floats and gay pride parades. You know, they're going to be there, but it feels like there's this kind of Christian understanding of it that is so intimately tied to focus on the family, tied to Islam. How do we say, no, it's different?
You know about Matthew Vine? Have you heard of him? Out of Wichita, he went to Harvard for 2 years, and then he decided to take a leave of absence and study all the scriptures in the age. And he just was from a Methodist church in Wichita. So he went back there and gave an hour-long speech that was filmed and put on YouTube.
Wow.
And it is a wonderful verse-by-verse refutation. Because like reading the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, is fun, and some of it, or it can be a war in your head. You know, the Psalms are like the only thing I read anymore. But sometimes you need commentary because the word homosexual, I don't think should be in the Bible. And it's loaded. Yeah, thank you. Because
It's in a translation that came up in 46? Exactly.
So,
Before mid-1800s, German psychologists came up with the term in the mid-1800s.
So they're talking about very specific things in those prohibitions, and it's not at all about community today. And knowing all those points, and political debate there. Or maybe not. I'm just saying, yeah, maybe not. But it's like, and thanks for pointing out that it shouldn't be. You're right. It's not.
Well, I'm Carol, and I am from Metropolitan Community Churches, which is a Christian denomination, founded in 1968 by a man named Troy Perry. He had been a minister in the Church of the Nazarene, Church of God, yes, Church of Nazarene. And he came out, or he was found out. He lost his family. His wife divorced him. He lost his church, and he moved to LA. And after a failed suicide attempt, he decided there was a purpose in him being alive. And he began to go to gay bars and tell people, God loves you just as you are. And the first worship service he held was in his house with his roommate. There was like 12 people there. And that was in 1968. So it predates Metropolitan Community Church, predates Stonewall by a year. And that was the ministry, and he was our founder. He also, to give you a more current, he was one of the couples that was involved in Prop 8, the original cases filed in California, and has been promoting marriage equality for years and years and years, trying to get married to his partner. So Metropolitan Community Churches was founded in the gay community. In fact, we were known as the gay church for many, many, many years until the AIDS crisis came along. And we lost so many people in our churches to AIDS. In the 80s, it oftentimes was called the AIDS church after being called a gay church. It's a small denomination in comparison, new in comparison, especially when you think about the Islam or Reform Judaism, any branch of Judaism, or even Christianity. In 1968 is when we were founded. But truly, we were founded on the margins. And after dealing with the AIDS crisis, we lost a whole generation of clergy. There are almost no men in our denomination that are my age. I'm in my mid-50s because they're gone. They're just gone. So currently, many of the elders in our denomination are female, and a lot of the clergy persons coming in, are probably more like junction. That's where we see a lot more of the male clergy. But we've ordained women from the start. We've ordained not just gays and lesbians, we've ordained straight people that supported that, and transgender people. So our mission was founded in the LGBT community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. And really, we've kind of done the opposite. Starting about in the mid-90s, we began to reach out to heterosexuals. So I know that sounds kind of funny, but we began to go, that was our reaching out, was to reach out to the straight community, for lack of a better word. And so like in my church in Topeka, probably about 30% of our members are heterosexual. Many of them are HIV positive, and that kind of makes into our church. So Metropolitan Community Churches is kind of a marginalized church among churches. And what we find today is that we're not all gay and lesbian, but we are people who have felt marginalized from traditional churches in many ways, either rejected because of sexuality or being HIV positive, or just didn't fit that model. Interracial couples, biracial couples, people that just didn't fit the norm have found a home in Metropolitan Community Churches. We're still relatively small. There's about 250 churches in the United States, but there are churches in 22 other countries. And the leader of our denomination recently read one of the prayers at Obama's inauguration. And she's on the White House Council of Faith. So we've gotten more attention, but we still are relatively unknown. And what we like to think is that we were a part of pushing UCC and evangelical Christian Lutherans and even some Baptist churches and Catholic churches to become more accepting that God has kind of used us to push the envelope. My own personal story is that I grew up Southern Baptist and knew by the time I was 7 that I was different, but I couldn't, at that age, I couldn't define what that difference was. And it wasn't until I was a freshman in college that I had my first experience with another woman. And I was deep, deep, deep in the closet, and still by my Southern Baptist life was taught that that was a sin. You know, that was a horrible thing, an abomination. And it was many years I spent either being what I call lesbian Carol or Christian Carol. And I would be in the gay community, and I would have a partner, and then I would feel badly about that and be filled with shame and guilt, and I would leave that and I would be involved in the church. And that's about the time I got my master's in divinity, Fort Worth, Texas. But I just never could seem to reconcile that. And finally, when I was 36 years old, when I was just one of those points where a friend of mine had been raped. She was going to a Baptist seminary at the time, and the man who raped her said that it was consensual. And because he was a man in Southern Baptist life, they kicked her out of school. And I was so enraged by that I went to a pastoral counselor, thinking I'm going to deal with all this anger. You know, I've got all this anger, and I hate this person, and I don't like how I feel. But when I walked in and sat down, she said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because I'm tired of feeling like, wondering, am I a lesbian or am I a Christian? And I've got to decide one way or the other. Am I a lesbian or a Christian?" And she said, "Well, I don't have any set opinion about that, but I will help you journey, discover that within yourself. And just to raise this question, it is a possibility that you could be both." And that was the beginning of the change for me. And I left the Southern Baptist life, found Metropolitan Community Churches. She actually told me about it. My pastoral counselor told me about Metropolitan Community Churches. And I went there. I found one in Orlando, Florida in 1995. And ended up joining the church and joining the staff there. And getting my ordination in Metropolitan Community Churches when I was 40. And met my partner there. My partner and I had holy union in the church. Again, we've done that from the beginning. We couldn't do legal marriages, but we've done same-sex commitment ceremonies since our very first days in 1968. Because we believe we can provide the blessing of God. Marriage is a civil ceremony. You can have all the ceremonies you want in a church, unless you have a marriage license, you're not married. So we've been doing the blessing, the ceremonial part, since our beginning. But my partner and I decided to have a child. She was a biological parent. And so I have a son who's 14 years old. His name is Nathaniel, which means gift of God. And we went in, it's been 4 years ago, we went to Iowa, and we're legally married in Iowa. Of course, it's not legal anywhere else but Iowa. And then, because of circumstances in our lives, we separated and are living together. We know that we're co-parenting our son. He still lives in St. Louis with his mom. He's a part of special school district there. But that's kind of a nutshell about me and my journey. And Metropolitan Community Churches is really kind of coming to grips with that and seeing our mission has been, and that's why I know those scriptures and know that background, because we've been debating those scriptures for a long time, and are very versed in that. I live in Topeka. I live across the street from West Barrow Baptist Church. If you've seen the pictures of the Equality House, that's directly across from me. I kind of felt like God led me to that house. I didn't put a gay pride flag out in the front yard or anything, but to me it was just kind of a silent protest to say, I'm going to live here and I'm not scared of you. And the people in my church loved it, that I lived on the street with them. And then the Equality House come along, so it's got to be a lot of publicity around it. And my only complaint is people honk at all hours of the day and night. But it's a cool idea. It's just to be there. And that's kind of the way I was feeling. Just to exist, we are not afraid of adults. We live here too, and we're not going to change who we are just because of your hate-filled sandwiches. So that's kind of my story and the story of Metropolitan Community Churches, which we all call appreciate clergy who are allies. It is so important. I've witnessed things that, as you said, I've gone over to pray with someone whose partner was dying of AIDS, and literally had families who wouldn't let me in the door to pray with their dying son, who then, after he passed, took the belongings of his partner and put them on the curb because the house was in the son's name and died. Seen had church members, of course, who died of HIV and AIDS. Just seen all kinds of things that happen to people because of suicides, because of their sexual orientation, even after they found the church, not because of messages from family. So it's really, I think it's really important that we realize that, as you said, all religion, that doesn't sum up Christian isn't all hate-filled. It isn't all just associated with, and I think we do need to take back the Bible. We do need to take back that word or that concept of God loves all of us. However, even larger than that, that there's spirit in all of us. There's divine spirit, whatever name we call it. And get back to understanding that the diversity among us is what creates beauty and what brings meaning and depth and interest when we're all the same as before. So that's it for me.
Was your pastoral counselor part of the Southern Baptist Church?
Yes. She was educated at a Southern Baptist seminary, interestingly enough, but knew about Metropolitan Lutheran churches.
I'm kind of curious, how's your interpretation of the Bible work, like in FCC, with the kind of, I'm assuming that you're feeling being marginalized, and then interpreting the welcoming interpretation from the Bible. It kind of goes in that order, rather than finding something in the Bible and then, I'm not welcoming as well. What kind of came first?
Well, we went back and we've actually we've got people now who've done work within the denomination, but we've relied on a lot of biblical scholars, probably most people in your denominations have as well, who go back to the original language, who go back to as much as we have of the, I don't know if they're original documents, but the Qumran, the Q, I don't see what they found, something from the Q. Scrolls, there's been scrolls that have been found in the Holy Land. And we've gone back to that and looked at the languages that they were written in and tried to get back to the culture of that day. There was no concept of homosexuality in that culture. No one was homosexual. Everybody was, there was an assumption. And go back and look at those scriptures in the culture and written. It's called historical critical criticism. It's not new, but it would have been, the early 1900s? Historical. So it's a method of looking at the Bible beyond taking it at face value as we read it today and looking at how was it written, what was the language it was written in, what did those words mean in those days. I think one of the fascinating things about the Hebrew scriptures is the Aramaic, the language it was written in, there's about a very small vocabulary, 2,000 words in vocabulary at that day and time, so you see a lot of pictures painted. A man shall not lie with a man as a man lies with a woman because it's an abomination. There's no word. There's no one word. Whereas in the New Testament, written in Greek's a very complex language, and much more complex than English. So looking at those languages. And then there are other methods of interpretation, because understand, I think one thing that people look over, not us, but other people look over a lot, is that everyone's interpreting the Bible. None of us were there when it was written. We're all interpreting, using whatever method we use. So, yes, taking a second way of looking at it is taking who we are now and looking back into those scriptures and saying, if homosexuality has existed since the dawn of time, which pretty much it has, who are the characters in the Bible who may have been an understanding that they were different or might have had same-sex love. And we look at stories like Jonathan and David. Jonathan and David were both married, but yet it tells in the Bible about them meeting, exchanging gifts, dismissing their servants, embracing one another. David says, and it's recorded in the Bible, the love that I had for you, Jonathan, is greater than the love I ever had for any woman. So looking at some of those stories, the story of Ruth that you mentioned, Ruth's husband had died, and then she went with her mother-in-law. She left her own people. She left all she knew and went with her mother-in-law back to a country she didn't know. And she said words that were in marriage ceremonies very popular in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Those are words one woman spoke to another woman. So we don't know what their relationship is, but there are positive examples in Scripture if we look for them of love. Maybe it was erotic love, maybe it wasn't, but there's examples of same-gender loving people. So that's kind of a long answer.
Well, he does have a kid with Boaz.
Yes.
Everyone calls Naomi's son.
Yes.
Your son.
Yes.
So, and Ruth, sorry, I don't know if it's up with Ruth, but, marriage is love.
Yes.
Not like they come along.
She did it to support herself and them.
Right.
So was it, what was it? And that's part of the lineage of Jesus, for those of us that are in the Christian tradition. That's part of Jesus' lineage. So that becomes very fascinating then when you begin to extrapolate the possibilities, because we just don't know.
Thank you. We'll turn to David.
Yeah, I don't have the experience in the school or anything like that. I can just kind of share some of my personal experiences. I mean, growing up Jewish in a primarily Christian society makes you feel marginalized from step one. So it's hard when you feel different to know why you feel different, except you feel different. And I originally grew up in New York, and there Judaism was a predominant culture. So it was we moved when I was 10 to Chicago, and it was probably one of those great shocks of your life was the schools don't take off for the Jewish holiday. I don't understand. The world moves on. What is happening? Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, their school, their businesses are open. It was a big shock. I grew up in a primarily conservative Judaism household, which for those who usually don't know, that's kind of the middle of the road of Judaism. At the time, it was as popular as the more liberal movement, Reform now. In 2013, it's significantly overpassed. Reform is by far the largest denomination in Judaism. But at the time, I grew up conservative. And I remember at my bar mitzvah, which is a rite of passage ceremony, they give you a prayer shawl. And it's a really, mine was really kind of dinky. Barely would have much of it. My mom said, my dad also said, this is the one you will wear until you were married. And your wife will give you a prayer shawl, and that will serve as, if you've seen like on TV, like a Jewish wedding ceremony, they have the prayer shawl a lot of times that you're married underneath, and your wife will give you. So every time I'm feeling pray with it, I just feel like, what are you wearing? Because I'm getting rid of this thing. It looks stupid and it's so small. And going through college, I was, like a lot of students, not quite understanding where I fit in sexually and stuff like that. And I was involved at Hillel, and I went to Miami University of Ohio. And I was on the student senate. I remember debating, this was 1990, adding sexual orientation to our discrimination policy, and it was very controversial at the time. So that was really my first foray into gay rights, so to speak. Then I went to KU for law school, and I met a very good friend of mine that was introduced through Hillel, and we became really good friends. And I came out to him, and then 6 months later he came out to me, and we kind of stared at each other and said, I guess we've been dating. they were very understanding of it, but they knew the thing that bothered me the most was I wouldn't be able to participate in the lifestyle. I wouldn't have that marriage, and I would be stuck with this tallis for the rest of my life. This prayer shawl that I just didn't like. And I was like, I would only get it when I got married. So, backstory is that in Omaha, where he was from, my historical facts may be a little bit off, so someone can correct me, but I believe it was an Episcopal minister that performed the same-sex wedding ceremony and was defrauded. That was across the street from my husband's synagogue. And they had a symposium, and Mike's mom, my husband, said, you guys got to come down here and talk to the synagogue. The synagogue can be talking about this, synagogue being Jewish house of worship. And we sat in front of this table just like this, and everyone was, oh yeah, we're totally accepting, we're totally affirming, stuff like that. And this is my wedding proposal story. Mike was sitting up here, and there was just Norris, and let's have it. And I said, will you marry the two of us? And the president of the congregation said, well, we can't really discuss that because you're not members. So the check will be in the mail tomorrow. So we sent our check in. And that became an 18-month ordeal with the synagogue. This was a Reformed synagogue. This was not even the tradition I grew up with. So this in some ways was a little bit alien to me, some of the traditions that was in Mike's family's congregation as opposed to mine. The synagogue had to debate it and had to get it approved. And eventually they made the decision that it is not the lay committee's responsibility to tell the religious leader how to perform life cycle ceremonies. So we got a letter from them saying that this is what was decided, and then we could actually schedule the date for our wedding. And our wedding was June 6, 1996. It was interesting because the rabbi there was Israeli, so he was from a different culture, spoke with a funny accent, as he said, and he was also, I believe he was injured during one of the wars, so he had a false leg and always walked with a limp. So he's like, if any congregation was accepting, it would be this one. They accept me, they'll accept you. So we had to reinterpret a lot of traditions. So I got to sit down and really look at a lot of ceremonies, and the internet was there, but it wasn't here with us today. And having to find other same-sex couples who got married in the Reformed tradition and got married in a religious ceremony. We found a lot of interfaith couples that got married that didn't have the ceremony that I always wanted. And my husband didn't grow up as committed to his faith as I did, so this wasn't important to him, so it was important to me. It was important that I had the Jewish marriage contract. It was important that I had that prayer shawl that I really wanted. And that was really the big thing, is going into the gift shop and saying, I want that one. I want the big one, black. So, so we got married in June 6, 1996. There were issues of, for example, in the ketubah, which is the marriage contract, which is really what in Judaism is the key factor of the marriage, what holds us together, is there's lines in the traditional text of we should have children. And I talked with the rabbi. I said, well, what do couples do? We're not going to have biological children. How do they handle this? And we looked at traditions of couples who knew that they were infertile, and do they simply, some of them say, well, we're going to put it in there because God can change that. More rational faith people will sometimes think, well, we will I think the wording is, we will be involved in the community and be participants in the lives of children. And that's the line we chose to put in, because we looked at that's the purpose of procreation, is to create community and to teach the faith to the next generation. And then we had the only unique thing we had to add beyond that was, because this wasn't legal at the time, and this was legal to our faith and what was important to us, we put in there that we would seek any and all legal recognition of our relationship. So we had the ceremony with Governor Pr.Shawn, and then when Vermont announced civil unions, because we committed in front of our community, in front of God, that we would do this, we flew to Vermont, got a civil union. We collected certificates. So we figured it was the whole get 10, one would actually count. So we went to Vermont, got a civil union. That was pretty exciting, but this was still not recognized. This was kind of different than marriage. Lawrence had domestic partner registry. We were there day one and signed up. And then the story was, I get a little bit emotional at this, California announced that Massachusetts had same-sex weddings, but it was only for Massachusetts residents. California was the first state to allow same-sex marriage for anyone from out of state. Well, it just so happened my husband was in San Francisco at the time of the conference, and we signed up, and we were there day one at San Francisco, and ABC World News Tonight followed us for a couple of days. And as far as we know, we were the first same-sex couple to be married in California. So the whole world got to see our ceremony, and I remember I said to Mike, I said, there's a blessing that we say in Judaism at certain life cycle events and every holiday, thanking God for bringing us to this day and sustaining us. And I said to him the day we got married at the synagogue, I said, when we get the same-sex marriage, when we have fulfilled the true duties of our ketubah, that's the first thing that I want to say to you. We will say it together. So you can actually see on the news, as soon as he says, but power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce two spouses for life. We bowed our heads and said this prayer, and we just all started bawling. So that's kind of my journey. So where we are, we're legally married in the state of California. So we're one of those couples that got in right before they shut it off. So I guess that's my story. Yeah, it's a little bit emotional talk.
Well, I want to tell a little bit about my story. I don't know where to start, but I guess for me, coming to my sexuality was always I had that religious German meaning that was very small. I was raised in the Orthodox Church. See this comes up. Very appropriate. So very traditional form of Christianity. And later when I came to college, I discovered Islam. I fell in love with it. It was very simple. Something I was looking for in faith. The rituals, the simple beliefs and everything. And just a lot of the basic morals and stuff, like the exact same thing that I was raised with as a Christian. So being a convert into Islam, it was kind of, for a while I was kind of jaded about it because, it kind of led into this, unaware, you see this very beautiful religion, you become part of this community. And then you get so absorbed in the laws and rules, so focused on this. And I've talked to other converts, and I guess it's probably overlaps with a lot of religious experiences where all of a sudden it's not about spirituality anymore, but so much focus on what's right, what belief is correct, and what actions are correct. So I got really absorbed in that. And at the time, I was very much closeted, even from myself. When I started becoming more honest with myself, it's more about, this is kind of my own challenge that God has given me in my struggle. I'll get a reward to get closer to God, struggling with these desires. Which for a while is just very exhausting. It became very exhausting for me because all of a sudden my religious life was so much defined by my sexuality. It just became my religious life. It was just like controlling myself basically. And then all the time, being around other Muslims, talking about marriage. Marriage and family is so important to Muslims and everything. So just having that in my face all the time really gives me that sexuality question always present there. So actually a little more than a year ago, I decided to come out, and I came out to my mom and some of my family members. And, I started into the closet, so I came out very late. I'm 25 now. Anyway, and then I started little by little coming out to my religious friends. And to make a long story short, some of them distanced themselves from me, So I think I probably broke a lot of trust with some of them. It's a very conservative community, and they really admired me for converting and everything. So I think a lot of people were hurt by that. But then other people I was very surprised when you come out to really see who your real friends are. I was also very surprised at how my really conservative friends reacted. I'll never forget, one of my friends was from Saudi Arabia, professor in Islamic law and stuff. He was the last person I wanted to tell. It's a very long story, but he had found out and he wanted to talk to me. And so after talking to him one-on-one, we had a get-together at his house. Me and some of the other guys from the mosque came and talked about sexual orientation. It was very surprising to me, even though they have very conservative views on it. It was very moving to me that they came there and wanted to discuss it and see me as a person. So it was very moving for me. Anyway, I'm not really a scholar, not at all. And within Islam, being gay is very much, it's very difficult because there's very little scholarship in erotic sexuality. There's a few people today that are currently working with more inclusive interpretations of the Quran. And one example is this guy that I'm trying to get to KU next year, Professor Scott Kugel, who specializes in Islamic studies. He wrote the book on Sexuality in Islam, which really helped me make sense of my sexuality and religion. That was the biggest thing. How do I reconcile these two parts of me? Because I can't, like you, Carol, it was just I felt like I had to choose between my religious self or my sexual orientation. So I had these two faces in me, and I just wanted to fit together again. So reading that book, it really helped me. It really opened my eyes to things. In the Quran, it's Islam first. It's very legalistic and everything. A lot of women who will cover in one way or another, they don't have to cover in front of certain people in the family. So, for example, if somebody wears a headscarf, you don't have to wear the headscarf in front of your husband or your wife, or your husband, or your brother, and things like that. The main thing is you cover up in front of people that you can marry, so it's all about marriageability. And then this long list of people who, you don't have to worry about being modest in front of. There's this curious phrase, but when I think about homosexuality and stuff, the word homosexual is not in the Quran, so it's kind of these long phrases, like in the Bible, like the man who lies with his man, like he does with the woman, that's sort of language. And there's this phrase, it's servants who, male servants have no desire. So, and I looked it up, and it's very like, in Scott Kugel's book actually, the interpretation of this verse is very canonical, like very mainstream. It's very interesting because nobody had talked about this verse before, this part. And they're varying interpretations. It's like listed one by one in one interpretation of the Quran. Like it could either be eunuchs, one interpretation meant somebody, man who has no desire for women, another thing right there. So coming to those interpretations was really interesting because it's like, wow, so God recognizes that diversity. There's even like a story of a man who lived in a household. There's a special name in Arabic for these kinds of in traditional Arabic society, there's terms for men who lack like women and women who lack men, kind of transgender identity. And there's also a sexual orientation part to it too. One of the wives of the prophet was saying there was this man that lived with us, and we thought he was one of these people who's gone, that don't have desire. And he was later expelled from the house of the prophet because he reported the beauty of the wife, because he saw the prophet's wife's beauty uncovered from his hair or something. I don't know what exactly, but he was talking to another man about how beautiful this woman was. And so the prophet was like, you know what, I think he knows what's going on here, So it kind of breaks that privacy aspect of the Islamic life, I guess. So it wasn't because of his, maybe his sexual orientation or transgender identity. It wasn't about that. It was about him breaking both the privacy and that trust that he had with the family. That's kind of a little tangent. I guess I wanted to add this verse that really meant a lot to me. It's really interesting. This is also in Scott Kugel's book. The verse goes, God makes night merge into day and makes the day merge into night, and controls the movement of the sun and the moon with each forcing from the point in time. That one is God, your sustainer, the total dominion, and the other is you, but that God control not even respect. And Scott Kugel comments on this verse. He says, the feminine sun, in Arabic sun is feminine, the feminine sun and the masculine moon run their courses, but their effect in the ambiguity of our routine life is not so clear. There's no division between day and night, between the sun's presence or its absence. God merges day into night, and the spectrum shades from light to dark, merges again night to day. So at the same time, we have these dichotomies of day and night, and male and female. There's also these wonderful shades in between. What's better than sunsets and sunrises? Very beautiful moments where boundaries cross. So each culture, we define gender and sexuality in different ways, but recognizing that nature is far more complex and diverse than human concepts of diversity has just really helped me come to terms with accepting myself. Also, I guess like one other thing, there's this word in the Quran that's sometimes interpreted as disbeliever. The word is kafir. I think it's wrongly interpreted as disbeliever. It denies truth that's presented to them. Because kafir comes from the word to cover. So you cover up truth that you know, something that you know that's right in heart, that you don't accept it. So for me, accepting what God has presented to me, even though it's really hard to be marginalized within the Muslim community, uncovering that truth for myself became for me a spiritual aspect to myself. rather than just something that's, oh, it doesn't make me Muslim anymore. It's rather like part of who I am. Eric's idea, Nico, that I should share my story. I'm a very private person, so I don't really like sharing usually personal things. And I thought it would be important to have like conversation. Any questions? I'd like to open up the floor to comments or questions.
I just spoke about Isaiah kind of sound like prophet theologian to me, or I guess I'm curious about your interpretation, and then kind of I'd like to see everyone's interpretation of kind of how their theology fits into it, as to whether do you think God is more accepting, or is it more human nature?
I don't know if I have it drawn. I guess for me, what I take it at is that in the text, it sounds as if God is changing. And to me, what that does is open up a possibility. It opens up new, Lutherans are fairly traditional. We're not quite the Orthodox, but we're on the way there. Okay, and so for us, part of that tradition is huge. So the idea that part of our tradition says God does a new thing here opens up the possibility for more new things. Personally, I'm going to say that our understanding of God has changed over time. Our understanding of how God relates to the world has changed, and it continues to change and develop and evolve. But that's part of what I like about Scripture is, to me, it reflects relationships between people and God and how they see God and everything. And that's why the stories are so great, because they're such human stories. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm handed out off of that. Okay.
Which is just my opinion, and that I'm not sure it's right, but just our understanding has changed. When you look at the understanding of Isaiah about the natural world, they thought they could sail off the edge of the world. They had no concept of the intimacy of the human body to the intricacy of the heavens and the sky. So I'm not sure if God has changed or if it's just that our understanding is grown. But I think there's an element in all of that, and perhaps we all would see it that way. I don't know. Anyway, I see God ultimately as mystery. We just don't know. Our minds cannot grasp. So I think there's part of that mystery that we never will know for sure. After all, if we can fully understand God, would we need God? If we could fully grasp it. So that's just my opinion.
Yes, it's a weird question, I think, just because of some of Judaism's relationship to God. I don't think of my relationship as being any different over time. Humans' relationship with God, humans' relationship to one another has changed over time. And the love of God has always been there. And it's just when we accept that divine spark in other individuals and recognize that we're all children of God. Things like commitment ceremonies and stuff like that, we have to reinterpret it in our generation. I give the example of, people have heard of a bar mitzvah, this ceremony, rite of passage for men, and there's one for women. It started in the 1920s. It's a fairly unique thing. And we didn't call it was important because when we were deciding what to call our ceremony, we called it a Brit Ahava, covenant of love. And we didn't use the Hebrew word for marriage because we don't call bar mitzvahs for girls. We call them a separate thing. We have to recognize respecting the past, Judaism is a very ancient religion, while simultaneously accepting that we can create new ceremonies and new ways of relating to God and showing our commitment to the community. So those things have changed. The humans relate to them. I don't think God has changed. In my mind, God has eternally always been loving of all of his children.
I think what would be even more fascinating if you could, this is my opinion, if we're all theists, in one way or the other, we believe in God. If you added someone to the conversation, for example, from Buddhists who don't have a concept of theism of God, and how they view sexuality and faith, I think that would be a fascinating voice to have present.
Especially in the Haskell, I think that there's been some discussion. It would be interesting to get some leaders from there to talk about their trust and stuff like that.
I've just been studying the Kaw Indian, mostly because I'm interested in local science, but I know that Suian tribe that they descended from was a non-gay household, so we don't have any indication of race. I think of the passages that, God did us in our mother's womb, and we're created in God's image, so I don't so much think of God changing as us changing, and I think we're made as God made us, so the old question then is God gay? And the Trinity from Christian history has this idea of God being many things at once, like diversity reconciled, which is what paraclesis means, like almost not a hierarchical order of God, Father, and Spirit, but like three things that are distinct, dancing together, like somehow one. So, we think about that in reference to your question too. And I think we have some new theology to do because we've been in the Western traditions like super fearful of sensuality in our bodies. And I think we're missing, a whole aspect of who God is, because we're made in bodies, and it's in this whole view of wedding body. So there is more work to be done. And my last comment, which you might want to take out of the video, is I will remind you that the whole universe began with a big bang.
There's a lot about eroticism and sensuality that is missing. That's what I said about growing up as a lesbian. When somebody said to me, "Did you have any models when you were growing up?" I said, "I didn't have a model of healthy sexuality, period." I mean, I knew my parents had sex 3 times over 3 children. Other than that,
Right.
but they didn't talk about it. They didn't celebrate it. So I think there is a lot of work to be done. NCC does some work around the body. In fact, right now my Easter theme is joining the dance, and we have belly dancers there on Easter Sunday who do belly dance to a contemporary Christian song. There's so much work there to be done there.
Thinking about Rev. Muslim's daughter, sexual ethics and Islam, and she has a short chapter on sexuality, and it's really interesting because when you start asking questions about the legality of homosexuality within Islam, it opens a bag of worms because okay, well, what about relationships outside of marriage? Because this is a very traditional value when marriage was an Islamic thing. So how do you make sense of that? And how do you even begin to start about sexuality within Muslim communities? It's a very taboo subject. There has to be so much more scholarship and openness that's needed in Muslim communities.
I don't know if you studied anything around it, but the Sufi is the mystical branch of Islam. Because the Sufi and the dance, some of the dance and all of that is just so sensual. That'd just be interesting, I think, to study how does that tie in, how do they look at that, sensuality and sexuality. Especially sensuality, just because of the movements of their dance.
Sufism is really interesting. I Actually, that's part of my introduction to this song. I had a book on Burmese poetry.
Yeah.
So I kind of returned to that and kind of looked at his poetry and realized I don't know, it has some different sensuality in his poetry. And it reflects, what's really interesting is like, he talks in metaphors a lot. And the biggest thing is whatever worldly love you have is kind of reflective of the greater love you have for God. So I'm really interested in translations. Beloved is always like capitalized B, you know.
There's a lot of people who think it wasn't like men.
Yeah, there's teacher. A lot of his poetry is very suggestive of having an actual relationship with this man. That's really interesting.
So we talked about like these established religions, but the religions are based in spirituality, liberation, whole life and happiness, for a person or for a community or for our world. And I think that the gay rights movement has contributed to our understanding of spirituality, in particular in relation to closet is the first thing that I guess I learned from. That's liberating because this, I don't want to trivialize it, but there are many ways that people live in the closet. And one of the marks of my calling, typically, is the first thing is that my dad disagrees with it. There's a courage element of it, and then there's the way that you do the closet, which is you may be out of the closet entirely or to a particular person. And then this idea of being able to be your full self instead of your divided self. And this seems to be central to my own experience of liberation, and this language has come to me out of the movement. And what else? Well, there's the masculine and feminine as a concept embedded in the culture, and there are a lot of ways that, I would say, as a modern American man, you're denied real, the best things in life, in particular intimacy, any sort of parenting. Just love has not yet really been available, I don't think. So there's a new lesson about spirituality that is coming out of liberation.
There's a lot of that when you go back to the Bible and look at interpretation and why it's written the way it's written. There's a lot of gender that's mixed in with that. Because part of the concept about being so against homosexuality or same-sex, there's embedded this in the sense of a very masculine culture to be, a woman is the receptive partner. The man is the dominant and the woman is submissive. Literally, in a physical sense even. And for a man to be gay, he's a receiver. I mean, so it's not to be manly. That's part of the historical critical interpretation of the Old Testament scripture, particularly in Leviticus. That a man shall not lie with a man. A man might be receptive. I mean, that would make him unmanly. That's what that can be about as much as anything else, is gender roles. We miss out in our culture. I think it's harder for gay men than it is for lesbians, And a part of it is the whole idea of definition of what's masculine. That is pretty sad. This men must fit in this box.
Yeah, and the gender and I find it interesting in the gay community how masculinity is portrayed. And for a long time I didn't identify as gay just because gender-wise I didn't identify as gay. I kind of had these stereotypes.
You weren't a flamer?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yes, to speak politically correct, I wasn't blaming gay, I can't be gay. Actually, I remember my first roommate here at KU, he came out to me as gay, and I didn't even know, at all, and, freaked me out, because I didn't even know. Speak for myself.
Some of these stereotypes, there's some truth and there's some that's just, it's just a caricature.
Right.
Based on a one-dimensional part of, I said didn't take my lesbian card because I can't hardly make a cross out of two sticks. Because you think of a lesbian with the tool belt down at Home Depot or Homo Depot. And I am not mechanical at all. I can't do any of that stuff. So it's just a caricature.
Which makes it really interesting because like the LGBT community is beginning to challenge these values for men, which is really interesting.
You see a lot of that. It is exciting. A lot of younger people more your age, who are challenging those roles. Because of the old days, the butch femme kind of thing for lesbians. Butch, you had the butch or you had the femme. Now, it's really all mixing up, and I think much healthier.
One choice that interpretation is always an option, but is rejection an option to many people as the component of your text? Or does it even matter? I know like the electrodemeanor or what have you, it's more about the process of the search, but are there times that an option that you're willing to see in parts of your text that maybe this is wrong, not maybe
Yes. I did not comment on that in terms of scripture interpretation, but certainly that is my method. What's sacred to me about the text is, 1,000 years of yearning for God written down. That's what's sacred to me about it. And there are a lot of ideas, and I think we try them on, test them against our own experience, and accept and reject until we refine our understanding of God and then thread the one that really exists. It's called the canon within the canon, and I think it's a personal process that you do. But yeah, these are different people with different ideas about God, and some of them are certainly wrong.
And I struggle with the whole concept of evil, which in scriptures interpreted the devil, personified. And I think that's a part of the text that I struggle with. I don't know, rejection might be a strong word, more that I've just taken that bit part, and I just think I've taken that and put that on the shelf, and I'll think about it tomorrow, like Scarlett O'Hara, because I just am not sure what I believe about that. It's hard for me to see evil as personified in this one person and character in the Bible. So that's a piece of it. Not even just about God. Of course, if you think about evil, there's a sense of thinking about good, and how there's good, evil being an opposite, in a dichotomy of evil. What is evil? Who is evil? So that's a part of the text that I really struggle with.
I'm going to answer your question with a qualified no that I don't reject. Part of what I value is, part of what I signed on to do is teach and preach in accordance with blah, 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 part of blah, blah, blah is the scriptural tradition. But part of what I value about that is the fact that then I feel like the scriptures challenge me, that I can become crazy, wacky, self-centered, whatever, and the scriptures challenge my own sinfulness, my own whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really out there believing in a personal devil,
Pretty hard.
Yeah, but for me, that lack of belief in a personal devil is not that I'm rejecting the scripture, but I'm seeing, I reject the fact that we were created in 7 days, okay? But to me, that's not where the scripture begins. Scripture begins with a story of creation that takes 7 days, but the whole point of the story is something vastly different than being a science textbook for us. So that's where I would, and maybe that sounds like I'm rejecting it, but that's kind of my qualified no. But to me, that story is still hugely important as a powerful story for me. It's just not a history textbook.
And it's a story. I think you
Yeah.
using that word
Right.
intentionally.
Right.
But it's a story.
So, in seminary, we talked about what you just described as a confessional text,
Right.
not a historical text, but how the
Right.
people experience an idea of history